What's going on, Bills Mafia? You're watching the Bills Breakdown by Chat Sports. I am your host, Tyler Smith, and on today's show, we got to discuss what GM Brandon Beane did following the 2025 NFL Draft. He hopped on a phone to call into WGR 550 and get on a radio show to discuss the discourse that was going on about the Bills draft class, and specifically Brandon Beane not addressing the wide receiver position in the first couple rounds of the 2025 NFL Draft. We know that the Bills did not go receiver until pick 240, all the way in round number 7, and a couple WGR hosts were not exactly too happy about that. Beane ended up getting on the horn and calling into the show to kind of clap back at these hosts. Here's what he had to say. He said, "It sounds like 2018 all over with you guys." Well, you guys were bleeping in 2018 about Josh Allen. You guys wanted Josh Rosen, and now you guys are bleeping that we don't have a receiver. I don't get it. We just scored 30 points in a row for 8 straight games. A year ago, I get you guys asking why we didn't have receivers, but I do not understand it now. And before we get into exactly the point that Beane's making in this statement, I want to just come out and say, I don't love Brandon Beane making a phone call to WGR and MFing the radio hosts on there. He knows, and he addresses it later on, is that they have a job to do. They also are not there to exactly be the biggest, experts on the game of football, or else they'd be on the Buffalo Bills coaching staff. They're there to react as, observers and people who take in this game and talk to fans and do all that kind of stuff. So Beane probably could have chilled a little bit with the curse words and how he kind of came across. But to be fair, he makes a valid point with that Buffalo's receiving core is not as bad as people are shaking it out to be, and acting like Buffalo had to go early on in this draft with a receiver. If they thought that receiver was number 1 on their board at certain spots in the draft, Beane said they would no doubt have gone that route. And you have guys who were certified in their roles at this point. Keon Coleman, who you drafted at the top of round 2 in 2024. You're hoping for massive things from him. You just gave Khalil Shakir a $15 million a year contract. He has become the de facto number 1 option in the Bills passing attack in the slot. And then you go and sign Josh Palmer in free agency this season, who I think is really flying under the radar as a signing, and somebody who I think is going to be extremely effective within this Bills offense. Somebody who is just 25 years old, and yes, is he going to be a superstar alpha receiver, somebody who's making perennial Pro Bowls and all-pro selections? No, probably not. But what he does do is give you a better body, in my opinion, than Amari Cooper that you had last season, fresher legs, and a player that has the full expanded route tree to his name. One of the better route runners on the outside in the entire NFL and better separators in this league. I think Josh Palmer is going to find himself wide open a whole heck of a lot this season, and Josh Allen is going to get him the football. People are kind of acting like this signing didn't even happen and that he's not going to be a factor in the Bills' offense. They gave him $12 million a year. He is absolutely going to be on the field a ton, and I think he's going to be a huge part of what Buffalo has going on in 2025. More from Beane here about the Bills and their positioning in the draft and why they didn't go receiver. He said, "You just saw us lead the league in points. When you add all the postseason, no one scored more points than the Buffalo Bills. That's including the Super Bowl champions. So you just saw us do it without Stefon Diggs, same group. How is this group not better than last year's group? Our job is to score points and win games. What do we need to get better at? Defense. We did that." So I get it. You guys have to have a show, and you got to do something about it, and you have to have something to bleep about. But bleep about wide receiver is one of the dumbest arguments I've ever heard. And honestly, I get it. Like the Bills and the way that they want to run their offense, and he'll talk about, and Beane will comment on more of this in a second, but they don't need to have an alpha. They're kind of going by committee at this point. And when you have a player in the backfield as talented as Josh Allen, who can get the ball to receivers, who aren't necessarily these top dogs in the league, then you don't necessarily need to go out there and splurge and overpay and kind of over-allocate resources to a position that has been just fine over the last couple of seasons, especially in 2024 when they didn't have Stefon Diggs and they put up more points than they did in 2023. I understand Beane's frustration here. The Bills receiving core seems just fine to me at this point. More from Beane. He said, "I get it. I'm just like, let's be realistic. Our job's not to have, it's not fantasy football, like to trot out the best receivers. You got Josh Allen. First thing you got to do is protect him. You can't have everything. You can't have Pro Bowl wide receivers and have a Pro Bowl offensive line and a Pro Bowl quarterback and 3 great running backs. Like, sure, I'd love to play fantasy football, but at the end of the day, it's just not realistic." So you only have one ball. You can't give it to so many people. So that's where I'm like, I understand the narrative. I feel like a little bit from the reporters. Then the thing is, our job is to score points. It doesn't matter what receivers, what quarterback. If you score points at the level that we scored, that is winning football. And he's totally right. As long as Buffalo is scoring points, which they did at the highest clip in the league last season, then everything is fine. There's nothing to be worried about. The Bills had one of the worst passing defenses in all of football last year. For the past, what seems like half a decade, they've had the worst run defense out of any contender at the top of the league. So now looking at the receiver spot, as long as you get year two progression from Keon Coleman, he becomes in a little bit more of his own here in the sophomore season. Consistency and the same things you've been getting from Shakir as your slot guy, your safety valve, somebody who can get it in the intermediate, in the deep ball game and make plays with the ball in his hands. And then you get solid enough production from Josh Palmer. I'm talking like 700, 800 yards. Then we should be just fine. And Bills fans shouldn't have to worry about the passing attack for Buffalo moving forward. Plus, I haven't even talked about Dalton Kincaid or Dawson Knox yet. If you get a big step out of Kincaid and you keep him healthy for the entire season, then there's going to be no qualms about Buffalo's passing attack or their offense because you got 17 back there making everything happen. But I want to know, down in the comment section right now, what did you guys think of Brandon Beane's comments that he made to WGR? Do you think it was too much? Do you think it came across too brash? Do you think that he should have just left it alone entirely? Or did you like what he had to say and thought it was necessary? Let me know what you guys think and your thoughts on it down in the comment section. All right, now let's move into the back half of today's show where we got to talk about the new Bills free agency visit that they had. Oh, look at that. It's addressing the wide receiver position, and that's Elijah Moore being on a free agent visit with the Buffalo Bills as of late. Jordan Schultz came in with this report saying that former Browns wide receiver Elijah Moore is visiting the Bills today. That came on April 28th, which was Monday. So he's in town right now. Could Buffalo be a landing spot for him? Moore had a career best 61 catches for Cleveland last season, and he just turned 25 years old. So this is a guy who has maybe some of the best football of his career left ahead of him. I mean, if you think about what he's been able to do in his career so far, well, it's been with pretty terrible quarterback play when you think about what he got drafted to with Zach Wilson in New York and the dysfunction that was in there. And then now he moves over to Cleveland, and it's a revolving door of quarterbacks in that building. So he really hasn't gotten the time to be able to shine and show how good of a receiver he can be in this league. And he's only 25 at this point. This is a guy who has put up 500 or more yards in 3 of the last 4 seasons. And I'm not saying that that's a crazy number to go out there and achieve, but he's been able to make plays, and given the situation that he's been in, has made the most of the opportunities. Yeah, he's had a tough time finding the end zone, to be quite honest. I mean, hasn't had more than 2 touchdowns in the last 3 seasons. So again, not exactly in the best situations to go out there and score points, but again, he's got to find something eventually. Eventually, some of it falls a little bit on Elijah Moore, and that's probably why he remains unsigned at this point. Brandon Beane did comment on the free agent visit, so we got more quotes from Beane here. He said, Elijah Moore's here. He's a guy who we've spoken to a few times leading up to the draft, and we were just kind of putting a pin in it, just like we did with several other positions, and said, hey, wait until the draft and see where we're at if he's still interested. If we took a guy in the first or second round, he's probably not too interested. But we didn't. And so, we picked up those conversations over the weekend. He and his wife came up today and visited. So we'll see. Nothing imminent today or anything like that, but a very good visit, and we'll see where it goes. To be honest, if I had to predict, I would say the Buffalo Bills sign Elijah Moore over the next couple of days. Look out for that this week. And could Moore have a career breakout in Buffalo? Like I've mentioned, being on the Jets, being in the Browns, probably the 2 worst places that you could go in the last half decade as a outside receiver. And what would he be looking at in Buffalo? Oh yeah, probably the best quarterback that he's ever played with in his entire life at any level of football. Josh Allen, 17, the alien back there. Yeah, I think with Buffalo not really having an established wide receiver 4 at this point, yeah, we're going to get a healthy Curtis Samuel. How effective is he going to be over a 17-game stretch? I think I'd rather have Elijah Moore back there at this point as somebody who can separate, somebody who can get the ball, caught on the sideline, and an underrated player as far as rack ability and his ability to make plays with the football in his hands once he gets 2 on it. Josh Allen will be the best player that Elijah Moore has ever played with, so I can only imagine that his production and his efficiency would be better in Buffalo than his previous 2 stops. As of right now, per what Spotrac thinks he would get in free agency, it's a 1-year, $4.5 million deal. But to be honest with you guys, I do think that they could get him on a cheaper deal with this. He's not signed past the NFL draft. Not a whole lot of teams have a whole lot of money to go out there and spend. So he could be coming at a little bit more of a discount. Maybe it's a $3 million deal, and Buffalo gets a diamond in the rough. Somebody who could vault up their depth chart and eventually be the wide receiver 4, maybe even the wide receiver 3 of this team if he balls out enough. But what say you? Let me know in the comment section. Should the Bills sign Elijah Moore? Is this a player that you're interested in for Buffalo bringing into their wide receiver room? As I guess according to WGR 550 host, they didn't address the receiver position enough. Is this a player that you guys would want in Buffalo? Let me know by typing S for sign or P for pass down in the comment section. And that will do it for today's edition of the Bills Breakdown by Chat Sports. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel because we're bringing you guys the best Bills offseason content on the YouTube platform. Lock us in as your #1 hub. And we'll see you guys all in the next one. And as always, go Bills.